Right then, okay, as promised for Ian Griffiths, a quick guide how to recondition your two-stroke or KTM starter motor. Should be the same on all models, maybe different parts, but principle's the same. Right, first of all, new set of brushes, HK1212 needle roller bearing, and your old starter motor. Right, first of all, undo those two bolts there, and that takes it apart. Top end comes off where the gear is. Inside here you've got this washer here, which is a press fit washer, so it might be a bit fiddly to get out. This one's been out before. So you take that washer out there. You've got a lip seal in there. If you want to replace it, measure it and take it to your bearing factors and get them to sort it. Otherwise, just carefully hook it out with a screwdriver or a pick and reuse it. To be honest, you might as well reuse it for the sake of it. And you can just about see in there you've got your needle rollers. Now this one's got a new one in there, so I won't go into details. You should know how to press a bearing out. Basically, if your old one's rusty and solid, just destroy it and rip it out. You should be able to get into there with a screwdriver or something. Otherwise they're probably quite flimsy. If you can get behind the outer race, then you should be able to mangle it enough to pop it out. Okay, so what you then do, obviously you've got your chamfered side and you've got a flat side. It might be chamfered on both sides. Press that in, put that in your vise, put that on top, socket roughly the same size as the outer race, and then carefully push that in. If you want to put a smear of copper slip on there, it will make future changes easier. Obviously give everything a good clean. Now be careful here because you've got two or one thrust washers, which obviously preload. We'll take out the slack in the bearings there. As you can see, there's two there, so don't go losing them, and remember, keep everything in the right order. It's worth marking on here which way round this is, so that you keep everything orientated right. There is obviously the groove here, so you should, if you've got a memory, be able to remember which way it went back together. So that's the bearing end, simple as that. There's an O-ring there and there. If you want to spend another 20p, replace those. Use a bit of silicone grease just to guide them into place. Right, so now you get to the other end. So that's your, I don't know what you call that, commutator, armature, I don't know, whatever. So you can see there, that's quite grubby. Try and clean that up with a bit of contact cleaner, brake cleaner or something. Maybe get into the little grooves with a small pin and just scrape any crap that there is in there out. If you're using any kind of sort of rubbing down paper, from what I remember, you need to use a glass paper. Don't use emery cloth, don't use an iron oxide or aluminium oxide sandpaper, because you will get the metallic particles in the windings and everything and you will bugger it up. So get all that clean and then turn your attention to this part. Let me just put the flash on, hold on. Okay, so this is the other end. Now you've got two sets of brushes in here. You've got one that's soldered onto the terminal and you've got one that's held in by that screw there. Behind the brushes is a little spring, and at the base there you've got a bush. Now that bush should hopefully be alright. If not, I think it's probably the same size as the other bushes that you can buy for the starter gears. I've never changed that, so it should be okay. Now if it's your first time doing this, what I would probably do is just see how worn they are. There is a little pip on the brushes. I don't know if you can see it on there. I thought there was one, maybe not. Yeah, there it is, it's there. There's a little pip there. I think that's a wear indicator. If it's worn beyond that point, change them. What you can find though is that the springs get a bit of moisture in there and seize up, and then they're not pushing hard enough onto the whatever that bit's called. I'm not sure. So it's worth sometimes just spraying a bit of contact cleaner in there and getting everything freed up in there, and then trying that first. Otherwise, get yourself a new set of brushes. That one, straightforward Phillips screw, take it out. Undo that other Phillips screw with a soldering iron, just get a bit of heat into that, and as soon as it melts, that will slide off. As you can see on there, it's just literally a sort of compression fit over a blade, and then it's just a dab of solder just to keep it in place. That one there has been soldered quite crap in the factory because it looks a bit wonky, but it obviously all works okay. So that's that. When you reassemble that, there's obviously a little plastic shield in there. Make sure you get that all in the right way round. Obviously, if you're using any kind of sort of a gas torch to melt that, just be careful that you don't melt everything else. Give everything a good clean and then reassemble it. So this one, as you can see from that, doesn't have a lot of meat left on them. That's actually had a bit crack off of there as well, so that's only sort of 3/4 of the width it should be, hence why this starter motor doesn't work. So in there you put your little spring. As you can see, that spring's gone oval, so that's probably why it's not working as well. And this is the fiddly bit. You need to put the springs in, and then you need to carefully push the brushes into their grooves. Now they will want to spring straight back out. So what I would then recommend is that you take the starter motor out of the magnets so that you've got a bit more access, and then carefully you need to hold the brushes back and drop that into the bearing. Now that is the fiddly bit, but with a bit of dexterity and maybe a little small screwdriver or something, making sure you don't crack or damage anything. You just push those back into their home, hold the wires back to keep them in place, and then drop your end of your starter motor in the groove there. Then with that all assembled, give me a second. Okay, so with that all assembled like that, you then place your magnets back over there. Now be careful, because I've left these washers on there, they will want to stick on the magnets. It is quite a powerful magnet, so as soon as you slide it over there, it will want to send itself home. End cap goes back on with its new bearings. Obviously, when you put this washer back in, I mean it is a bit of a compression fit, just tonk that home with a socket so that it's nice and set, otherwise it won't be recessed enough. Chuck that on there, put your screws in, happy days. That should be starter motor reconditioned. Other things to pay attention to, certainly on the 2-strokes, I don't know what the layout of the 4-stroke one is. I think they might use a different mechanism. This is your starter Bendix. What happens is these get sort of grubby and rusty. You don't want to use too much oil in these. You want to use something like a real light oil, GT85, WD-40, just a little squirt, because if you use too much oil, it will attract all the dust from the brushes and everything that's in the casings, and then that will seize itself up over time. Now you can just about see in there, there's a little round spring that holds 3 magnets into place. That spring is a service item, you can buy it, they're about £1 I think, if that. If that spring breaks, which it invariably will do as soon as it rusts a little bit, the weights when the starter motor engages will jam out and then it won't disengage. When you then fire your bike up, it will then destroy your Bendix. Now, one of these gears is only a press fit, and the idea is that as the starter spins in that direction, it engages the Bendix, and then when the bike fires up, the Bendix returns. Now, it should freewheel in the other direction. What can happen is that everything sort of seizes up, and then the press fitted gear spins, or something inside here spins, and then nothing happens. And that's why you get the characteristic where the bike seems to want to engage, gets to top dead center, and then goes bleh. And then if you keep jabbing it, it will eventually crank it over, but it's not an ideal situation. Now these, again, if you can get to it, you can hook that spring out just by opening up the Bendix like that. If you want to give it a real good clean, you pull down like that and remove that spring clip there, and then the whole thing will just explode in your hand. It's very fiddly to get back together, because you need to hold 3 of those weights in place and then get the spring round it and then try and reassemble everything. There is another spring in there, which obviously needs to be pretty free running. Now, at either end of these, in the cases, is a little sort of rubberized bush, or metal shelled rubberized bush. Again, they're pence. If they start to wear, they can wear out, and then your starter will be jangling around like this, and it will then wear your cases. So it's worth spending a few pence and doing the job before it gets that far. So there's one that end, one that end, and then you have a gear that that connects onto this to transfer the starter from that direction to that direction, and there's one either side of that. So a couple of quid there, replace all of those. I put a little dob of white grease on there. Don't go mad with the grease. Little sort of dob of grease on the gears there, just to sort of give them a little bit of lubrication. Again, if you use too much grease or too much oil in there, it will attract the dirt, and then it will just turn into a grinding paste. But apart from that, that's the only issues you're ever going to get with your KTM 2-stroke starter motor. And if anyone says anything different, then that's their opinion. This is my opinion. Okay, have fun. Okay, just a quick comparison, because I've got another set of old brushes here. That's your new brush there, and where are we? Let's get that in view. And that is a worn one. So as you can see, they're not, it doesn't take much to wear them out, but it's certainly worth sort of changing these out. Talk to your KTM dealer. I've got a feeling they're about 14 or 17 quid, and that little bearing there, 99p off eBay, I think, or something ridiculous. What I'd suggest is buy a couple of these, because these bearings do seize on a very regular basis, and as soon as your starter starts sounding a bit sluggish, whip it out and give everything a clean, because most of the time it's just that this is seized up, and therefore it's just creating too much drag on the starter itself. But again, give everything a good degrease and clean up. Make sure there's no bits of metal or anything stuck on the magnets that's going to cause an issue. But apart from that, that should solve your issues. These are available. I think this one was a replacement off of eBay. I've got a feeling it's about 89 quid. It lasted about a year before developing the same fault as the original starter motor. Then I reconditioned the original starter motor, and this one will be reconditioned as a spare whenever I feel like it.